So we have our three views of our head here, and we are going to be doing a couple things here. First, we're going to just do really just basic placement, and then we're going to do some construction, and I'm going to get into ear terminology last. And on top of that, then we're also going to do, we're going to learn how to place the head on the neck, so we have a full, unit and view of whatever's happening here. So, yeah, this isn't. I don't think this is going to be the hardest one of all the classes, but I think the ear is really interesting because of how odd the shape is on it. And I think all the little parts can throw you off. So that's why we're going to do construction first and the placement, just so you get an idea of just what the general shape is. Because I think everybody gets kind of lost in the details of what the parts are and trying to draw them, and they miss the whole shape of the ear and the placement. That's just as an instructor and just watching people over the years, that's pretty much what I see happen. So the first part from the front view here is basic placement, and basic placement on the ear would be about where the eye and the nose line up from the front. So if we have our proportion of our head, up till now we've just kept it as a single ovoid unit, which I think is a safe thing to do. When I draw, I'll do the exact same thing. I'll just draw the ovoid first. This isn't like something I'm doing special for class. That's actually how I draw. And then I'll put the ear in last. But I have everything in here first. Everything's placed really nicely, and I know where everything is. So if I'm doing that, then basically what I'm doing for the placement of the ear here is adding a little extra length there. And if you notice, it goes at about the same angle, or maybe slightly out further than my cheek angle here. You guys see what I'm doing with this angle here? It's about the same, maybe it's a degree or two past. So if you do it at an angle on one side, you're going to want to do it at the same angle on the other. So it's not exactly going to be a semicircle. It's going to be a little ovoid, and it's going to be a little bit bigger on the top than on the bottom. Does that make sense?
Like an orange wedge.
Yeah, like an orange wedge, but it's bigger up here than down here. And then whatever I do on this side, I'm going to match it. But you notice that I made a placement first. My placement was this. I know how high it is. I know how low it is. And then I've created an outside angle, one angle that I'm going to keep on it. So the bracketing is really the key thing here, because you can't just, if you're just going in and putting in a wild curve, then the whole class is sort of out the window, because the whole point is about keeping it in a container and knowing where your parts are going. Okay. So if we go to this our side view here, we have the same conundrum with our container. We need a high point and we need a low point. So let's do that first. Let's do the horizontal bracketing. And that part's easy. Whenever you go from one view to the other, I always get the easy crossovers first, because we know the horizontal ones are just going to be the exact same, right? So that's easy. I can just move that over. Okay. so then, the backward one, a reasonable, expectation on this, well, let's talk this out a little bit. So whatever your corner of your jaw is, this angle of the mandible, it's going to come up here, and then it basically needs to make a little curlicue here, creating a little space for the ear canal. So basically, we have this hinge of the jaw here, and then right behind it we have the auditory canal. So if everyone wants to go up to the back of your jaw with your finger, so if I'm going back here, you can feel how your ear attaches right on the other side of your jaw, and like move your jaw like this so you can feel the whole thing. That's all happening right in there. So it's all in that one little spot. So when we're building our ear, whatever my angle for my jaw is, I will start the ear angle about a couple of degrees after that. So if my jaw angle is going at this angle, my ear angle has to be going right after. So it's going to tilt back a little bit, by like 3 or 4 degrees, or 30 or 45 degrees would be too much. That would be weird, but you get it. It's just at a slightly different angle. This is really important because when you draw your ear in, from whatever angle you're at, whatever angle this is for my jaw, I'm looking at the ear and coming at a slightly different angle just behind it. And if you're looking at my ear, do you see that happening?
Yes.
Okay.
Very
It's
clear.
at a slightly different angle. And I've probably seen this on my own head a lot of times. Looking at all your ears, and all your ears are set back at a different angle. That's kind of cool because at least it gives you a nice starting place. Whatever angle this post is at, this is going to be just slightly off. It's a good placement. So I don't even bother drawing ears unless I get this angle right. So if you're starting with the outside of the ear first, in my opinion, you're just off, because you need to know how it's beginning and originating. That would be like, I'm going to go outside and do a landscape, and I'm going to start my landscape by drawing the top of a tree. Right? This doesn't make any sense because you need ground, you need rocks, you need all the other placement of things. All right, so this angle on the back here, it's going to be typically about the same if we're wedging it in there. I'm being really generic right now, but now we have this nice little set of angles that we can play with here. Really, really good, because no matter what angle the head takes, whether it tilts, goes up, down, sideways, underwater, outer space, whatever, it's gonna follow this pattern. All right, so let's do the same thing over here. In our 3/4 view, I got my jaw coming up here, and I have that slightly different angle for my ear. Jaw is going here, ear is going there. And now I can make my, repeat that angle. I don't know about you, but that gives me a lot of comfort. Do you guys find this helpful at all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And really, depending on who you're reading or what you're looking at, you might see the ear at a higher consistent angle. I think some people put it a little bit higher, this set of horizontal angles of the placement on the head. You just need to find a consistent one. It's pretty close to in there, maybe a little bit above or below consistently. Oh, I forgot the back view. Let's get a back view in. I'm sorry, totally forgot about that. It doesn't have to be big, I just need it in there somewhere. Actually, put the line over here. really spend much time on this, did we?
No.
So really basic construction for the back of the head. This is a good start here. So we just need to know where our nose would be hypothetically in the front. We're just gonna keep a little constructive thing there for our ears. This little V in the back, that's the, what I'm jokingly refer to as the worry bone. I think it's the occipital prominence, if I recall correctly. I'll get you the name of that later.
Yeah, the whole thing is the occipital ridge, that's how I learned it.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get the name in
Yeah.
a minute. But yeah, so now we have a placement for everything up there. And yeah, we're gonna do a couple things here. All right, does everybody have everything in?
No, where's the nose on the back of the head?
You don't see it, but the line would be half, just like it,
Okay.
you know, that line there. And the only reason I'm looking for that is to get the lower line of the ears in. So from the front here, we're gonna have a couple things happening. We're gonna have a beginning of our ear shape here. And I'd really like you to think about these in terms of these little parts I'm gonna put in here. We're gonna call them things later. So I'm gonna do this constructively on purpose because I found if you don't really kind of get the construction, the part names just don't matter anyway. I've actually forgotten the part names so many times. I mean, I forget them all the time. I had to look them up again for this, but I know how the ear is constructed. It's worth way more over time. So from this angle, this guy's gonna do one of these. Little sausage shape. So we'll get the whole thing and then we'll do the 3/4. So from this angle, from the front, this first one is going to overlap the second one. So if you think about them as these kind of tube links that are overlapping each other, like jelly beans or beans, macaroni noodles. I'm going to keep metaphoring until somebody has a question. These guys overlap there. The important thing is you're seeing this in segments. So if I threw this out to you the way it's often taught, you have a helix, that's one thing. But when you look at an ear, that doesn't happen that way. You see all these funny folds and overlappings and everything. And I'm trying to teach it to you in that form, because when you turn it in space, that's really what you're gonna have to do. You see it in those parts. Okay. Then we're gonna have a long shape that comes on the side this way. And I think I made this ears too big. It's starting to look like Yoda. That's fine. Completely happy with that. Yeah.
Does that last piece line up with the ear canal? Or should it, or?
This one?
Yeah.
It might go a little bit below. I'm not too specific on that, really. I'm trying to get you to just get all the parts in right now. Yeah. The big part here right now is really the overlappings and how the connection between those things. Okay, so this bottom part. One more segment here. Coming around that way. And then we're gonna get our lobe at the bottom of that. So depending on who it is, you might have a bigger or smaller lobe. And for our purpose, the lobe has a little bit of a, what's the right way to describe this? I'm trying to think of the right visual.
Gap or an indent?
I'm going for, all right, do you guys remember those cinnamon candies? They're like red, and you push on them and they're a little mushy. That's like your lobe. If you flatten it out, that's the worst analogy ever. What I'm trying to get at here is there's like it's like a cut cylinder, and it's fatty and kind of round. There's actually a plane in the front part of this. You guys get what I'm going for here? This is the only. Everything else in your ear is cartilage, by the way, and this is the only fat part, so that's one of the things that sinks more easier. So what I'm going for in this shape right here is, I don't butcher any more metaphors, something like that. So when this inserts in the bottom there, that's kind of what that generic shape is doing there.
It's like a tablet.
Yeah, a little flat tablet, something like that. Okay, so then we're going to get a front part as well. It's going to make this kind of mesa shape right here, and that has a plane to it as well. I'm going to pretend this is lit this way just so you can see the plane on it. So that's your what they call the tragus. This lighting is going to make no sense, but I'm just trying to show you the plane on that. It's hard with the marker. And that's this part up there. So the thing is, if I drew it flat, you're going to miss that there's there's area in there. That's why I'm making sure you're seeing the wedge in there.
John, is that more properly part of the cheek musculature, or is that actually part of the ear?
I would consider it part of the ear because whenever I find this collection of material here, it joins into the ear mass, so it belongs there with the ear and all the accompanying parts. So it's going to follow this angle up with its buddies. So it's behind the jaw with the ear. That's a good question though, but you're gonna see it next to it. Yeah. So if I'm considering the cheek and all of its cheeky parts, the cheek's gonna come down like this, and then that thing's on the other side of it. If I have the jaw here,
So it's behind the masseter.
yeah. It's not even in the same. Yeah, it is behind it. I can feel my masseter right here, and then yeah, it's right behind it. So feel that, and then feel clench your jaw. You'll feel the masseter, that little muscle moving. It's like right in front of it. In fact, let's get a picture of that. Yeah, good question. Let's go a little deeper in there. That's a really good placement question because it's completely appropriate for what we're doing. Okay, so you can't really see it in here yet, but your masseter is actually going to come underneath there. That's where it looks like and feels like it's moving, but all your ear material is going to go right there. Find a better one. That's funny, I can't find the side view of the head muscles. I'm gonna take the time on this because it's totally worth answering that. Yeah, so the masseter muscle, it's a big muscle right here. You can see where it's at on there. So yes, the masseter is going to be going up here and then I think attaching up here. But it'll be moving right in this path there, like clearly separate from that. All right, so where are we at with construction here? All right, so then we're gonna have it's called the conch. Concha. That's gonna go this way. It's gonna have a little gap in the top there. And I'm gonna draw a little dark spot where there's a little gap around it. everybody see kind of what's going on up here?
No.
Alright, so the conch is gonna come this way. Then it's gonna join in the lobe down here. There's gonna be a little empty space in here, and that's where the brown is. The space between the parts here. So the lobe is really, it's gonna look more round in general. Everybody, good, yeah, joins in the lobe down there.
The proportions are all past in the.
Yeah, guys, don't worry about proportions now, just get everything in there. So from the side, this is gonna do something like this. There's gonna be a little gap up here. I'm gonna fill this in a little darker again. That tray is looking flat. And then it kind of connects into one. Everybody, with me here? Okay, so I'm gonna get in our last angle down here. Some of my spacing might be a little bit wonky, but these are all the parts together. So as far as our view goes, if we're doing our 3/4 going away here, you know, we're gonna have our big cheek mass up here. our jaw. And then we're gonna have this guy, the tragus, sort of leading the beginning of the overlappings. And then the lobe, I would consider it behind it if you have to create an order. Does that make sense? But you need to create some kind of set pattern of these. And then this guy might join in at the same level about as the tragus, but I would, if that were me personally, I would look for this to overlap behind this way, like it's going back. That's why I taught it in overlappings. So then you get this one, then that one, and then that one. So you guys kind of get the idea of the order, right? And I think I keep saying this every week, but if you don't know how things overlap, stop and find out. Because your drawing will not make sense until you do. Don't model, just stop everything. Find out how it overlaps, just don't model. Because if you get the overlappings correct and you have a good line drawing, it'll look like it's turning. Because everything is like, oh, there it is, it's turning. But if you don't know what it is and you start putting shading in, now it's like, we had an expression in school like, it's like polishing a rotten apple. Because you don't know what's going on there anyway. It's like, oh, let's polish it up. Of course, that doesn't make sense, but that's what, when you're rushing into it, that's kind of what's happening. Cool. So let's do let's throw in the back view, because this is where this, our little prep work of talking about the overlappings, I think, starts to pay off a little bit. So, I want you to think of radar dishes. You know, on the top of a mountain or wherever they are. So, you know, all the sound waves are going in. It's kind of like what our placement is. Got this nice little base for our radar dish. It's kind of like the side of the head here. So this is our little mound of our radar dish from the back. And as we create our generic radar dish, this isn't like a perfectly symmetrical dish. It's actually show you what I'm getting at here. All right, so if we got our little base of our markers, we got a base of our radar dish. It's going to be oddly symmetrical, something like this. Like if that's our center of it, it's going to be radiating outward at a slightly strange angle because the top of it's bigger up here than down here. Does that make sense? But if you think of the radial pattern on it, now we have a schema that we can work with to get the placement of our radar dish going here. Okay, so this is going to need an outside edge. And then there's like this little inside rim here. And then most importantly, from the back, look at how this overlaps here. So let's start with the top part. It does the reverse of what it did from the front. So we have all of our parts, right? Only now it's going the other way because this one is most toward us. one in front, whereas here it's in the back. Are you with me? I'm being very generic here, and how this inserts, you're gonna have to look at it individually, but that's not a bad conception for how the ear looks from the back. So, then we get this one going this way. And then we get the last one. I know I'm changing angles, and I know that screws you guys up sometimes, but just keep these, just remember, just go outside in here. Get rid of that. So generically, if I just needed to slap an ear on from the back, you know, there we go. If I wanted to get a little more concise, we get our overlappings. You know, kind of leads in that way.
So John, what you're saying, I'm just checking for understanding, that the back of the ear is reverse order for how they're
Yeah.
drawn, because for obvious reasons, we're seeing it.
Yeah. Yeah, do you see that up here? It's like, it's just going the other direction. So this one's first, second, third. Here it's,
Okay,
that's,
okay.
you know, there to there to there. And then whatever's going on with our ear canal in here is actually going to be created in this lump here, because it needs to create this part first, right? So we can hear things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the other, this is a little clearer.
I got you. Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to talk.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. You guys want to take a little break?
Yes.
All right, so we're going to talk a little more specifically about the parts here. So when I constructed in the beginning, I just kind of get these raw parts up, and I'm going to show you how this, you know, corresponds to the actual ear up here. This is from Robert Beverly Hales and Paul Richet's book. So I wanted to say one thing first, though. Kathy, I think you brought up that the tragus here medically was considered part of the cheek when you had something done up here. Visually, however, I just added into the ear because I'm looking at yours while we're speaking, and it's still separate off of that line. It's behind and joining into that mass. So from an artistic standpoint, from a massing standpoint, it goes in with the other material. I think it's important to note, though, that if you're looking at this and your skin is all white and nothing is, whatever color your skin is actually, there's nothing interrupting this line, it'll look like it's going in the same, that it's attached to the same thing. But it is, however, on a different plane. So in a planar sense, it's joining into the ear and it's part of that mass. So that's why I included it in there. Does that make sense? Okay. So it can be both, and in that sense it is. So as far as parts go, we have the tragus is that part we're just talking about. And then down here, we didn't really get into this, but when you're, the conch part here comes down, there's what we call the antitragus in here. So it adds this little lump. And then you have your lobe. Trying to get this. right here. So if you have the tragus up here, you have your conch part coming down. We didn't really add this detail in before. There's like a little lump there.
Okay.
So it's like these two guys are talking to each other across this little chasm. And then your lobe comes down there. So if you're gonna be, gonna detail this. Let's do this. You got your tragus. It's coming that way. Then you got your antitragus, and then your lobe is hanging down there. Then you got your ear canal in there. This guy actually comes down and creates a little pattern in there like that, so that it can like taper in on the other side here. Does that make sense? And in fact, if I, talking about right in there, is that little tapering in there? Depending on who you're looking at, that's more or less. But yeah, everyone's got that little thing going on in there. So there's like a little taper right in there. So if I'm looking at this from the front, and if you guys could just watch this for 2 seconds here, you could actually make another overlapping right here with that part. Does that make sense? That part there from the front would create this last like little skinny kind of overlapping. And the tragus would go in front of it. Okay. I know when I flip views around sometimes you guys lose you guys, so just making sure. So same over here from our 3/4. Do another little wedging down there that would go behind. So they call this the anti-helix. I think I've seen this called the conch before. The whole part there is the helix. That whole guy in there. I'm calling this whole part the anti-helix. This is worth giving a name to. Oh, I'm sorry, they're calling the inside of that the conch, not the top part. They got the fossa triangularis. This little thing is really interesting because sometimes you see these little wedged parts up there that can have some angularity to it. You just have to watch that because they can have like a real sharpness to the angles in here. So just look for that little triangularity in that, because those angles collect light, especially when they're you have the sharp angles up there. All right, I think we're going to put in the neck and do that placement we're talking about. Who's in the drawing during the week? About half of you guys. Okay. Let's start from the back, actually. So, if we were to use our head as a measurement, and then we were to double that, just kind of pretend this isn't down here for a moment. That would actually, the whole head length goes to about the nipple, 1 one whole length here is typically about the length of the placement on the nipple. But about half that is a good place to think about here. Because we're gonna do a little dot down for the spine. Can anybody see over all the gobbledygook? Are you able to kind of see through it, or do you want me to start over again? I'm going to draw a little bit of the shoulders and the neck. Do you want me to erase this, or?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to erase it a little bit. I'm going to do a little placement of the head on the neck. So if I have a center line coming down, that second head is typically where the nipples would be. So a nice way to get our shoulders in is think about it this way. If we have our head length, and our head length is always from our chin to our crown, from the front, if we turn this on our side, that head length on its side, it's a pretty good indicator where the shoulder blades or the scapula, the wedge of the wing of the scapula here, where it's going to touch. So, about halfway down, we're going to get the pit of the neck. Just for our purposes, like, let's just draw in a little bit, really basically. Unless you're super muscular, your neck isn't going to be at the same, it's not going to be as wide as the head here. It's going to be in a little bit. We're going to have a really basic cylinder we're going to draw for this. Is everybody with me so far on the proportions? Yeah, good, okay. So if we're at the pit of the neck here, we're going to make a little triangle, a little low triangle like this. This isn't a bad conception at all, because no matter how you turn, now you're going to see this from, a few different ways. It's never really going to lie, because now you know what's going on there. So this is a really simple construction of this. So if I had to throw some shoulders in here. I got some basic tubes for the shoulders. And again, we're just keeping it to about 2 head lengths, because this is really about the head, but you need to place the head on things, obviously, so this is kind of important. To get a little constructive anatomy in here. If I'm doing the whole body, this is one of the first things I'll look for. And then, you know what the other one would be on the chest that I would look for? You guys from the Wednesday class might remember this.
For the sternum,
Yeah.
top of the sternum.
Yeah, so I'm looking for this angle at the top of the sternum. If we have a cross going that way, that indicates where the head is going, because if I turn my head this way, now that cross is that way. If I'm gonna turn my head in space, now that cross is going back that way, right? That tells me the placement of everything. I have the same thing that I look for here with the sternum. So a few things are going to happen here, anatomically, but that's our basic construction. So if you wanted to do the same thing for the back, you pretty much just do that same head, and then your triangles kind of repeat that way, but from the back. Actually, that's really another one. Now, there's only so much anatomy we're going to get into, but I want to at least get into a little bit of what you need to know to make things believable. Buddy, are you with me here? So we got a few parts to really pay attention to. We have, this one's easy. Got the pit of the neck. And we have a nice plane here for our climber. It's proof I went to art school. Plane of the neck. Right here we're going to have the sternum. If you want a nice way to remember that, it's kind of like a bow tie with a little dingle at the end. Then our clavicle is going to do something very specific. If you need a single way to remember it, you know, you have this wedged unit kind of going up there. The point of the shoulder up here is actually the scapula coming from the back. So this little wedge you see up here is that's the scapula, and we're seeing the edge of it. Anytime you see someone's point of the shoulder, you see clothes draping off of it, you can thank the wing of the scapula. That's all responsible for that. So this is a really generic conception with the clavicle. In point of fact, this actually makes this nice sort of three-parted journey up there. There's like three little wedges, and they make it like a little S-curve going up like that. Really important to know. And just to throw in a wrinkle on this idea about this angle here, you know, I look for that cross angle. Using the clavicle as part of that angle is maybe not the best idea, because if I turn like this and I go up like that, now my clavicle is moving at a different angle. So you're not looking at the clavicle, you're looking ideally at the top of your sternum here, because that doesn't move. My pit of my neck isn't moving at all as I'm touching that. Just an idea, just to keep that in mind. You can't use the clavicle for. The clavicle is a dubious reference, is a way to put that. Suspect. Okay. So from the front here, another landmark we're going to need is the larynx or the Adam's apple. Sometimes it makes a couple of different notches. But for placement, that's kind of important. And from this angle too, you're going to see, the chest muscle, and you're going to see your deltoids coming up and attaching to the clavicle up there. So as far as portrait goes, and looking at the head, this is about what you're going to need to know for, drawing a human in a typical scenario. Even if they had a tank top on or a low-cut dress or something, you're going to see all this material in there. And really, like if you're really doing portraits and you're really, really getting into it, you're going to want to see all of the connectivity up through here and how beautiful it all is together. Because what's a head without like a nice long neck and the attachment in here? Just from my own standpoint of what I find beautiful, I spend a lot of time looking at this when I look at people's heads. If I'm kind of drawing them in my head, or if I'm drawing them for real, and I spend a lot of time just paying attention to that angle, because what happens when you turn and you have all these beautiful things happening in here is really part of the whole flow of the head. It's pretty cool stuff. Okay, so we're gonna draw a muscle here from the back, and this is going to insert in the back here, this muscle I'm gonna tell you here. It's called the sternocleidomastoidus. And I'll get to what all that gobbledygook means in 2 seconds here. So from the side here, this is gonna come down. It's gonna join in right here. There's a few muscles in the body that are just so achingly beautiful, and this to me is one of them. So you see this muscle from every viewpoint. Whatever the person's doing, you're going to see this. So it's this muscle right here. This attachment, you see see that popping? That's one attachment of the sternocleidomastoidus, and it attaches to your sternum. So it's both sides of your Adam's, not your Adam's apple, it's on both sides of your pit of the neck there. So as I do this, that's my attachment there. The other one goes to my clavicle. Is that popping?
Yeah, you see the space.
You can see the space in between. Yeah. So if someone's in extreme duress, like, don't eat me, tiger, then that thing will pop out. But you don't have to be eaten by a tiger. It could be other circumstances too. But you guys can figure that out. So that's it. Yeah. So you're gonna create a little gap in there. And most of the time, if people are just walking around living their lives, you're not gonna see that much. But if I turn my head, I'm gonna get that naturally. And I'm not in duress. That's just me turning my head. Hey, there's that ice cream stand. The thing's over there. So yeah, so that's all visible there. And it really, if you're just feeling your neck from the side, that's all the sternocleidomastoidus. So the other big one is going to be the trapezius. And I want to decorate our crude construction here by putting a little up marky here, up mark there. And what this is going to indicate is that muscle's going up. Because from the back, well, let's get to that in a second. Let's finish from the front. So you have this thick band of the trapezius coming and then joining in. Actually, I believe the sheath of this actually comes across there and joins in the top of the clavicle that way. And definitely goes into the top of the scapula there. So I'm making an extra notch there so you get this in your mind. Because when that breaks the skin, it's going to collect highlights, and it's just such a mark, just such a great mark right there. So in the middle here, there is a muscle under there, but it's not really doing anything that we need to know about. So I'm just going to let it go. but there's that little gap in here. And you guys feel this, there's a muscle under there, but unless you're doing a lot, it's, actually I think that's like one of those under muscles, it doesn't do much. So for our purposes, there's a little pause in there. And pauses are nice because they give a little breathing space between areas. Like the pit of the, right in here, that's another one, there's like a little pause going on in there. And that's fine, because we have all this other stuff happening on the sides. And drawings work great with pauses, and the figure has a lot of little pauses and gaps in there. So the more you can think of pauses, if you have any, use them, because they're important. They're like little open spaces in music. Okay, so we really don't have a lot here. We have the sternocleidomastoidus, sternum, clavicle, trapezius. Let's go to the back. So, can you guys see this little drawing here? I'm going to sit and draw. Cool, so from the side, get our head in here. So from the front here, it's going to have a little angle actually. What's going to happen is we're going to have our attachment back here for the sternocleidomastoidus. It's going to be right behind actually, right in there. Make a thick wedging down to here. We get our clavicle coming up, the wing of the scapula right up here. This guy. Okay, so then we're gonna get our Adam's apple up there, our little pit of the neck. We're not really gonna see it much because it's kind of hidden by the sternocleidomastoidus right there. And then in the back, our trapezius is gonna take up all that space in there. by the way, this little angle is kind of interesting because when you segment the clavicle out, the different attachments go to different places on the clavicle. So your front of your shoulder, your deltoid's going to head over to this first segment of the clavicle there, and then your wing of your scapula here, it's gonna, the middle part of your deltoid's gonna occupy that, and then the back part of your deltoid here is gonna head to the ridge of the scapula. So we get this whole top part of the trapezius here. From the front here, you're gonna have your sternum, but then you're pretty much gonna see the chest muscle doing its thing. I probably dropped this a little lower than neck, but we're drawing that so that it's fine to see it. But this would be the nipple of the chest there. I probably should have raised that up a little bit, but you guys get the idea there. Again, look at the pitch on this. It's like a bigger angle up here, and then there's the open space down here. And I can't climb it, it's just too steep. Everybody see that, or I gotta block the view? I'm gonna do a 3/4. Have you guys gotten any more fluid at drawing heads out of your imagination like this?
Yeah, better.
3/4 is
Okay.
good.
Yeah.
It's always tricky. I gotta work a 3/4 too. It's not like, I got one I can just kind of draw, kind of rote, but you still have to think about it because you have to decide kind of what angle you're at. You can't be at more than one angle. You just have to kind of pick your angle and then go for it. You can change your mind along the way, but then you have to change all of your assumptions. Okay, so big thing here is we're gonna get a little placement there. So if we start constructively, bless you. He needs a neck, right? She needs a neck. So we're gonna make a little cylinder. Cylinder's not bad. Cylinder, tube, we'll do whatever. And from the front there, I wanna find our sternum. We know what we know there, we know enough to, actually I'm gonna do this. We're gonna create a little contour so we can kind of see in 3D behind on that column. I gotta say, first class to now, you guys are just like, oh, of course. Yeah, that's what we're doing. The first class, honestly, I wasn't sure if you'd all make it back. Like, you guys are just like, oh yeah. Do that. Really awesome. It's like really fun to see the transformation. Yeah, awesome. So if I do this and I'm walking back this invisible construction line, and I'm saying this is my front, right, where this little dot is. Let's just do one. So got one thing happening here. Everybody with me on that?
Mhm.
That's our center line. This is walking around in the back. We need to have that trapezius attached to the middle and the back of that cylinder. So you're like, okay, it's back there. So when you're doing your construction lines, now you have a place for everything. Now if I have my shoulder on this side, it at least makes sense that it's going to the same line. One of the most common things that I find with drawing errors with people is, let's say someone's drawing an apple, right? An apple with a flag on it. And then, let's say there's a cloth going behind the apple. And then on the other side, you continue the cloth. Well, this doesn't match the bottom one. Maybe a changed angle in there, who knows? But it looks wonky. So getting all of your parts to line up together, so important. So in the back here, if I'm gonna have this guy come up the back, I'd be like, oh, it attaches in the back. If I was drawing, if this were me drawing and I didn't want to put a bunch of construction lines in, I would ghost this. And then boom, pick it up right there.
Yep.
And I don't know any other way to say it other than ghost. Like, you're not putting a line in, but you're following the trajectory and really close, and then you're like, ooh, there it goes. And now it all makes sense, because we're working around the form. And we're kind of thinking about what's happening and being conscientious about it, right? So, the good thing is now I know he has room for a neck too, because the neck has to go back. Let's play this game out a little bit. So, if my sternocleidomastoidus is going to attach behind the ear up here, let's do it the obvious view here. Let's do the front view. Actually, hold on. Let's get in a sternum before I get too excited about that. So the top of our sternum, it's going to be our weird tie shape from the front. But we're seeing the little wedge of it, so that's what that angle is. So if we're finding landmarks here, we have the flat of the scapula on both sides. This guy was just waiting to get in the picture again. Attention hog. Okay, so from this angle, we're going to have another important landmark, which is the clavicle. So you may or may not see the top of the sternum. You may or may not see this angle much. You know it's there, like this little divot, but it's it's covered over by skin and everything. But what you are going to see is the wing of the edge of the clavicle on both parts. So this is a hugely important landmark, and this is an important landmark, bony-wise. So then, to get from your point of the clavicle here all the way over to the scapula, I like to think of it as, you can do it two ways. You can do the angles, or you can just make a gentle S-curve. It's more likely. Makes sense? One of the conceptions, I think it was from pack was one of these where it makes this beautiful bow shape. Really nice conception for that whole area in there. Plus, the bow is just such a beautiful shape. I mean, you had any opportunity to just put that shape in, it's just worth it. Interestingly, it's kind of a similar shape from different view of the lips.
Oh,
Okay, so now that we have all this in there, now we can place our sternocleidomastoidus. Comes down. There's a nice thick muscle. Creates one attachment, second attachment, got a little gap in there. The one attachment is on the sternum, second attachment on the clavicle. And then we get our trapezius, hogging up all the space back here. This thick band coming around, creating this whole shoulder up there, and then there's a little sheath that comes off of that and comes forward to the clavicle. I'm gonna find a picture of that sheath so you know what I'm talking about. This doesn't quite get this sheet across, but I'm glad we're looking at this because this, he points out a couple things here. So this is attaching, trapezius is attaching on this last wing of the clavicle there. And on the first part of the clavicle, I want you to really get the idea of this flat kind of rope-like quality of the sternocleidomastoidus. Then we get our little gap in the middle. This little open spot in there. Now there is muscle in there, and if you guys want to investigate it, go for it, but I haven't, in the entire time of drawing, I have not found it useful or interesting or worth knowing about. It's a bigger fish to fry. Cool, so from this angle, we're breaking out of our conception of the neck as being a cylinder. This angle coming down this way with our what do you call this thing? Sorry. Adam's apple, thank you. So you got this coming this way, and the sternocleidomastoidus kind of wrapping around from the front from the other direction. And then it comes down into this soft pit of the neck here. So that's really kind of neat, because and if you look at it from the side here too, you can actually see the angle there, and then this one coming this way. You know, in point of fact, if you just needed to simplify it, most of the time your neck looks more or less like a cylinder. But that breaks up into its little parts really quickly as you move or do different things, or, you know. Yeah, so if you notice, we went from a really broad simplification to more detail now. And it's okay to start with a cylinder. And that's that simple. That's like life drawing. You start with tubes, and then you complicate them. Okay, so if we have the edge of our shoulders, we can create our tubes for our arms. We're going to have our cylinder of our chest. Our shoulder muscles are gonna come in here. If we have 3 parts of the clavicle here and the outer part, we're gonna get our front head of our deltoid. We're gonna have another nice little, not a big gap in here, but it's gonna be a little one. We're gonna have our chest muscle come in. Cool. Who asked about the neck before? Was that you, John? Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah, so we got a good delve into the neck here. So, this is kind of good stuff to know here. So if you're gonna draw a head now, you have a good way to begin to place all this stuff. Just have some idea what you're looking at. Cool. I'm gonna take a little break. Delve into Peck's ideas a little bit about the ear. So he has his different parts in here, and they correspond to how we made our angles, right? One angle, second angle. That makes sense? The little parts up there. And he's got a couple of things here I wanted to throw into the mix. He's got his nice lobe down there. He shows what the cartilage actually looks like right here. So that's your cartilage. And then this is your fatty deposit at the bottom. And then anything filling in there, it's skin and fat and continuation of the parts there. So if you feel your own ear, that kind of makes it fascinating that that's a piece of cartilage, and then you got your loose part down here, a little connective tissue in there. I actually tried to find pictures of ears with potatoes growing out of them, because I thought it'd be, because everyone says that to their kids, and say that to my daughter too. Couldn't find them, unfortunately. But I did find lots of pictures of Mr. Potato Heads with ears on them, and that doesn't really help. In case anyone was wondering. So, let's have a look up there. Again, this is some conceptions from Peck about here. I thought these were pretty valuable, these ones in the top here. So if you didn't have a way to think about the ear before, I kind of like this one. He's starting with this C shape. You don't really have to draw if you don't want to. I'm just kind of talking and visualizing at the same time here.
Oh, with a hammer claw going through it.
All right, so if you notice, look at the angles. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Totally matches the
Yeah.
initial conception we worked with. And then he breaks it into a second one there. I don't know where he thinks this guy's going, but it's going somewhere. I like how he made that idea there. And we got a nice little split there. All right, so now we've created that. And then he, of course, forks it into another angle there. But it's a fun little constructive exercise. Now, he's got a nice visualization there too of thirds. 1/3, 2/3, 3/3. That's not bad. That works. Yeah, I definitely used that one. Actually, I think I have used that one before. I remember that now. Oh, look at that. I love that. Alright, so let's get down to the bottom here and see what he does with these other things. Oh, that's kind of similar to my idea about the radar dish. That Iron Man looking thing he's got with the skull there. So, if I had to start with that little knob there, you know, I would angle that slightly. Same conception, but now we have, you know, a similar thing there. Does that make sense? And, you know, in point of fact, none of these are wrong, they're just conceptions, so I like walking through it this way, because you guys can pick your own, like, you know, that's why I'm walking through it this way, like, you need to just get involved in the thing here. Oh yeah, there we go, from the back. He's got that big knob there, round part. Oh, this is what I missed from my back conception. So he's got that part, that first part that I talked about. He's got the long skinny edge there. He actually gets the wraparound from here, which I don't think I did very well in my drawing. You guys see that, right? There's this little curly Q around. Now we're gonna look at some actual ears. We get a Dürer again. Did you guys see the new Aliens movie, Prometheus? Wow. Dead air. All right. I'll be here all week. This looks like the aliens in Prometheus. It's really weird. I hadn't seen this drawing in a long time, and like this is, I think they just took it right off them. They had to take it right off of this. But he's got Dürer's got his ear going on in here. So one of the things we're talking about, got the edge of the jaw there. Tragus on the other side of it. 1, 2, 3, 4 angles of the ear. Helix. Oh, sorry, that's the helix. Anti-helix. Conch. Anti-tragus. Tragus. And the lobe. Yeah, he gives it a lobe a separate angle there.
Doesn't the angle look a little too, how would you say, 90 degrees?
I think the lobes they're all a little different.
No, I
Everybody's
meant the
face
ear
differently.
itself. The
Oh,
whole
like
ear
pretty
should
straight
be a
up?
little tilted more toward the,
In my conception, yeah, and I'm looking at all your ears and like they all tilt back, but you know.
nobody's
yeah, I
perfect.
don't think you got it. Maybe everyone where he lives hit vertical ears.
Oh, what a great drawing that is.
Yeah. So we got Leonardo here.
Wow,
Oops.
wow. It's incredible, isn't it?
So you can see the ends of the cheek there. Tragus is separate from that. Jaw comes up. Got the lobe hanging down. Tragus, anti-tragus, anti-helix, helix. 1, 2, 3, 4 angles. Got your little triangular. Totally forgot the name of it, but you know, I'm talking about the little dip in there. And a conch right in there. Let's take the other one there.
John, who is that, do you know?
It's Leonardo's drawing of self-portrait. It's in the Hale books.
Doesn't look too happy.
It's incredible the power that.
Look at that, the eyes, look at that.
Yeah.
And the curl of the lips.
Thinking deep Leonardo things.
Wow, yeah.
All right, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4 angles there. Anti-helix, tragus, anti-tragus, lobe. You guys are all happy to be in like airplane mode right now, aren't you? Nobody's scribbling anything. It's funny. All right. We could, you guys want to name the parts?
Okay. Oh,
Lobe. Tragus. Antitragus.
helix.
Helix, anti-helix,
Pretty much it.
conch in the middle.
Yeah, conch in the middle.
Oh, and then triangle, then the fossa.
Yeah. And then he's got his angles going, 1, 2, one, 2, yeah, he weds them together there. 1, 2, I got the top one, yeah, drop. Can't really see that one too well. So we'll grab out what we can here.
Helix,
Yeah.
anti-helix. Antitragus. Tragus.
Yeah, he's got a big gap in there.
Not much of a lobe.
Yeah, not much of a lobe. Who knows what happened to it?
His teeth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool, you do the same thing there.
Oh.
Tragus, antitragus, antihelix, yeah. Helix.
Yeah, pretty clear up there. You can see the, that little sharp angle there. It's like the jaw coming in front, the whole point. I think your point about, how you guys appreciate this was, I always found that when I was learning all this stuff about all this is that it was never quite written for artists fully, I felt. So I had to understand it in a way that I understood it. So I had to simplify everything and filter it for myself so I could draw. Cause I'm like, yeah, it isn't quite it, whatever I was reading. And the medical stuff was almost even worse because it doesn't show it in a 3D conceptual form. So that's kind of why I'm throwing it in there at the same time. And that's why, we're talking about the tragus. It's like, is it part of the cheek? I get it, and I don't care, because I have to draw it. I have to draw the thing.
Right, you're not operating on it.
Yeah, and I wound up doing the same thing with art history too. Like I have to filter it so deeply. I'm like, this isn't written for me. This is written for an academician in a conversation with another one. It isn't written for me, because I want to know what brushes he used. I want to know what time he woke up in the morning. I want to know how they interrelated with the world as an artist, not as usually not the way it's written. So, all right, this is great because he shows this in a painted sense.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, this is Rubens, by the way. So you know who to drool over.
Wow.
So we got one angle, 2, 3, 4, and if you notice on all these, the fourth angle, it actually creates the edge of the ear in a point angle change, and then there's really like the fifth one. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we know where the edge of the ear is. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, point angle change, scoops down. Then you get the lobe, antitragus, tragus, conch, antihelix. And just to solidify that point about the separation of the tragus from the cheek plane, you see this gray tone in here? You notice how there's a light spot on the tragus right there that's separate from that? Like he's separating it. He's telling you that it's a separate plane. That's exactly what I'm talking about there.
John, technically, wouldn't there be not just a fifth thing on the ear, but a sixth that leads to the lobe?
Oh, you mean
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that
that
little
there, that, because that's another angle.
Sure.
It is, yeah. Yeah, if you're being, if you're looking at this drawing that way, yeah. Yep. I was just being really broad with that.
Okay.
But if you include that way. And that really turns into that form then. Will Smith. This is one of these things that I love about ears.
Oh, look at it here.
As stocky as I know.
Wow.
So look at how this comes up there, and then this angle shoots back right there.
Yep.
You can see that angle change. Pretty, it gets worse as it gets grainy, but you can see the angle. See where that gets darker right there? One angle, second angle, third angle, and then there's the flat part at the top, and then 4, and 5, and you added the 6th one, go like that, but yeah, you're creating a curve there. But I love this little shape that the ear gets. It gets this wiggly kind of like, these very cute ears, they're almost elfin. You know, that's when the elfin thing comes up, is when that thing peaks sometimes. It's just a really beautiful shape. And I hope if you got nothing else on the ears, if you ever see this, now you can construct that shape arrangement so you can get the thing to look as beautiful as it is. Yeah, nice thing comes down, nice little scoopy shape in there. Yeah, nice little plane separation there. Tragus, jaws just in front there. Plane change ends right there for that zygomatic arch. And then the usual parts you expect in there. With the light on this the way it is, he's creating a sharp highlight inside the conch in there.
There's something wrong with his eyes.
What do you mean?
The eyes are completely level.
How like it's
The right eye looks larger than the
Yeah.
left eye.
how it like it
It should be the
kind of
opposite.
wrap and turn a little bit. Yeah, like the placement might be a little weird there. And we get our anatomy man. So yeah, so that's your masseter. Zygomatic arch. You know, then all your parts line up there. Same thing. Oh yeah, this is good for the
That's the
yeah, how powerful it is.
Yeah.
It's your trapezius. That's another muscle in there, and I forget the name of it. I think it's levator scapulae, if I recall, but it doesn't, you're not really going to see it very often, so it looks more important here. I mean, this is a stylized flayed man or écrochet, which is where it's like they took the skin off, so they're just showing everything as it is underneath. But you almost never see it from our standpoint, so just knowing these two big blobs here is good enough. We have a little flat head of the sternocleidomastoidus mastoidus there, the clavicle head, different angle going down there. The voice box. Yeah, look how tiny your lobes are. Yeah, nice big angle there.
You have 20 years.
She probably had them surgically raised, so.
So,
Alright, yeah, tragus. Yeah, that's pretty small.
we lose a lot of earrings.
But I don't have the lobes I have now back when I was a kid.
Alright, yeah, same stuff there. Yeah, she's got a little jog up there with that little fattier collection of material up there. I don't think we've seen that yet in these pictures. Actually, I think Will Smith did too, but you couldn't see it from that angle. It's very, very distinguished here. Yeah, sometimes you see the skin flap over this way, over the jaw there. But I generally try to conceive of it as coming in front there. But just an FYI, you might see it that way.
Who's the painter, John?
I don't remember off the top of my head. It might be Rubens though. Yeah, it's Rubens. Baby ear.
So round.
Yeah, not really much of a lobe there yet.
Yeah, or the anti-tragus, it's very,
Yeah, it's
Soft.
pretty soft.
oh, no, I meant the anti-helix. too.
Oh yeah, it's just all fused together there. Yep. Yeah, sometimes you'll see those fused together and not two separate
Baby.
columns, but you can see the beginning of the column there.
I think you're right, John. As we get
It's a
older, it
baby,
gets more
it's a young
defined.
child,
Yeah.
it just hasn't formed yet.
This whole class is just an excuse for me to put on her.
Yeah.
In case that's not
Not fair.
obvious. Yeah, look at that nice line there. Makes nice and clean. She's got the little thicker top part of the helix up there. There's a famous picture of her, I think, standing in either Belgium or Germany after the war, and it's like, you know, the street's kind of like smoky and there's like rubble, and she's standing there. I'm like,
Yeah.
the way she does. I'm like, are you kidding me? All right, yeah, all the parts in there. Cool, that's pretty deep in there, a little cleft. One of my favorite things to do in drawing ears is I'll draw the shadow shape and really define it, because it tells you all of where everything is. Yeah. You know, assuming I have the whole thing drawn in. But I like this little. I've seen this on more of the ears as we're looking at them. There's this little kind of cleft quality in there of the sharp angle in there. There's something to pay attention to. Some of the people who've looked at it have had it, and some haven't. But there's like a blade-like quality on the edge. So this is rounded here, and then there's a sharp seeming
Sharp edge.
quality on it. Yeah. I'm gonna run out of pictures to show you guys. We'll worry about it at the end. Cool. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
I'm trying to get the videos up as soon as I can.
Okay.
Some of it just requires a little bit of editing, so I'm trying. But they will all be up at some point.